This episode contains sensitive topics. Discretion is advised.
Welcome to the Lusty Lounge. Come on in, find a seat. For the show today, I, Puce Planet, aka Puce, will be hosting with my co-host Minka.
Hi.
And Alt.
Hello.
Today, we are going to be discussing sex toys, the types of sex toys, what they are, and which ones we'd want to use, what we have used, and what we would want to stay away from. Luckily, before the show started, I was able to find a nice little link for us to follow along and kind of say our do's and don'ts to. So that way, Alt, our local vanilla, will.
You're more vanilla than me. You couldn't handle.
Not when it comes to sex toys.
You're more vanilla than me. You couldn't handle fucking Minka talking about putting boob bugs in the boobs. You got all scared and wimped out. I want to hear that from you.
That is a totally different subject.
But it's fucking desensitized to that shit.
Have you ever used a sex toy, Alt?
No, they're expensive.
So you're the vanilla one today.
Yes.
Vanilla's probably not the right term. You're the inexperienced one.
I was going to say, yeah, if I want to have sex, I'll just go find a person and ask nicely. Or not so nicely if they're into that.
Have you ever used sex toys with partners?
No, because the last partner that had a sex toy was just like, this is for me, no one else. I was like, okay.
No, that sounds kind of boring.
I mean, it wasn't my girlfriend. I'm just like, I'm just here to have a fun time and then go the fuck home.
Fair enough. So, Minka, what kind of experience do you have with sex toys?
Well, being in the BDSM community, there's, been a lot of uses. I've owned multiple dildos of different variations. I have a magic wand. I have butt plug tails.
But do you own a bad dragon dildo?
Yes.
See, I've actually, thanks to
wasn't
TikTok,
expecting that.
I've heard that they're not a very good company.
Yeah.
I haven't done any digging into why they're a bad company.
The owner
That's all I've heard.
has turned out to be kind of a shitbag. So people are kind of pulled away from it. I don't know the exact details myself, but it is my understanding that the owner is not a great person. So I know there are some alternatives out there. I was
going to say there's always alternatives.
Yeah, I just can't think of the names right off the top of my head.
Yeah, I was going to say I don't know either. I don't look into that stuff or anything that size for sure. But as far as my experience goes, I have used some vibrators and wands with my wife. So I've got some minor experience. Nothing as far as BDSM.
You mean you don't own your own personal own-a-hole/pocket pussy?
No. Probably a bad idea. Besides, I've got to wait for that.
Really quick, I just looked up a list of some good alternatives to Bad Dragon. You've got Mr. Hanky's Toys. You've got Ben and Tom. You've got Uberim, Geeky Sex Toys, Lust Arts, and Tantus, which I actually am friends with the people who created Tantus.
See, you had somebody in your back pocket.
Right. Holding out on us.
Now we know who to go to get our extra large sex toys.
No, we could have had a potential guest. Fuck. Damn it.
Future episode.
We'll see.
I mean, that'd be interesting.
I don't really like doing sequels because that requires watching the first episode to get the baseline context, but that's neither here nor there.
Fair enough.
I've heard of one of those companies, and I was like, she's saying words at this point.
All right. So, starting at the top of the list on this website, just to start us off here, we've got dildos. I'd assume, Minka, you have the most experience with them.
I would hope.
Why would you hope? There's nothing
Puce is
wrong with
far
sticking
too-
dildos up your ass.
Their Puce is far
true.
too boring and vanilla to do anything like that.
Okay. Alt, are you saying you'd be willing to explore that territory?
For my wife, yeah. That's about it, though.
Nah, my wife and I have both agreed. No butt stuff.
You're both missing out on some great orgasms you could be having.
You know, I think I'm okay with that.
You say that, but I do feel like
See,
if you experienced an anal orgasm, you might change your story.
See, I'm at least willing to try with the person I love, but past that, I'm just like, we'll see. Probably not, but we'll see.
No. I don't want to put my dick up my wife's butt, and I don't want her putting anything up my butt, so I'm okay.
Okay.
So it looks like there are actually a variety of dildos, which makes sense. We've got standard dildos, which I'd hope if you're listening to this out there somewhere, you know what a dildo looks like. We've got your textured dildos, which are spicy dildos. I'd have to describe them as double-ended dildos for those couples who both want to get penetrated at the same time. And strapless strap-ons, which I didn't know that was a thing.
Yes, it is. Also, with double-ended dildos, like, you don't have to do it with someone else. Like, it is something that they are very bendy, so if you have a vagina and an asshole, you can bend it, shove it in both. If you're into DP, you can shove them both ends into one hole. Like, there's a lot you can do with double-ended dildos.
Good to know.
So, well, no, because this is a fucking Healthline article, so I'm not that surprised. Because of the adult entertainers I've seen, I'm not used to like regular looking dildos. I'm used to whatever the fuck Bad Dragon makes. Them niggas weird. Horses and dogs. I've seen a lot of people go, yeah, this is my knot, and I'm like, several questions, multitude of questions.
See, I also question the knot. Like, like, knowing the biology of dogs, they have that to get stuck.
Mm-hmm.
How does a dildo do that?
Every now and then you can find somebody who's built one with a knot that's inflatable. But most of the time it's just that it's something to shove into you that, like, gives you that really stuffed feeling. And a lot of times, because it is wider, like, it takes a minute to, like, actually shove in, and then because of the elasticity of the body, it will close around it a little bit. Like, imagine you're doing anything with your butthole, and, like, you know, normally it's tight, it's puckered, and as you shove things in, it's constantly trying to close back to that. So if you get something really big in there, it's gonna, like, try to close around it if it, like, has a smaller section after it, which is why with anything that you do anal, you want to make sure that it has, like, a flared base, because, I mean, you don't want to be that person who goes to the ER and, you know, gives somebody a story about, oh, Buzz Lightyear was shoved up my ass and the button popped and the wings came out and now he's stuck. Like, you want to be careful.
You don't want to be the next X-ray that they pass around to the interns and laugh at. So please don't be shoving things up there that don't belong there, and use flared dildos.
But yeah, so that's the like, it's the mixture of the, like, extra being filled feeling, because it's, like, extra big, as well as, like, if you get it in there far enough, a lot of times part of your body is going to contract around it, and so then, like, you can pull on it and it won't just, like, pop out like a straight dildo might do, and you can get that sensation of that extra sensation from that, like, pulling feeling.
So it's more so for the extra sensations than the actual act of being knotted.
Not necessarily. A lot of people are into that idea, so playing with something that has a knot is going to help mentally get into that.
So for the role play aspect?
Kind of. It was just the...
Pew, some people just want to be fucked by dogs and they can't legally do it.
It's not really necessarily a role play thing, just like a mental thing. Like, I have yet to be able to really get off by just physical sensation alone. There's got to be all the mental stuff going on in my head. And so if I'm, like if it's like, oh, I've got this thing in me, and then all of a sudden my head is going off creating all these stories about, like fucking a werewolf or like whatever. And it's just like, oh, they just came inside me and now I'm stuck here until they're done. Like I'm just now their cum receptacle. Like that's pretty fucking hot.
Okay. So, when I got to the strapless strap-on part, I read that their little paragraph there. It's definitely interesting to know that that's a thing. I would have never imagined or thought about that being something that can happen.
Yeah, so imagine like somebody wearing a strap-on. That's one thing, and like they get they can get something out of the thrusting sensation and stuff. But a strapless dildo is something that is going to like if you have a vagina, which is usually the people who use it, it's going to go into your vaginal canal, and then you can still use it like a strap-on, but you are also like actually getting a bunch of sensation from it as well.
Yeah, it looks like from their explanation of what it is and how it's used, it's a lot of like core muscle exercise, and like just the movement of it bouncing around is what the user gets out of the sensation.
Mm-hmm. And I will admit I have not used one personally, so I don't know if they like will come out easily while you're thrusting or not. But I would imagine that it does happen.
I was going to say, it does also talk about the fact that most strapless strap-ons do come with a harness that you can use with it, in case you are not of the strong pelvic muscle type.
Right. And that would make sense. That way it's like it's keeping it inside you while you're using it to fuck someone else. So that way you're not having to stress about, oh my God, is it going to fall out? Is it going to fall out? Like, you can just enjoy it.
Oh, anything to add on there? Any questions, concerns, thoughts?
I had something, then I lost it. It's not about the strapless ones. Going back to animals. And the question
we can
from
always
Minka,
go backwards.
Yeah. What's your question?
have you used like a horse-shaped one?
That's the Bad Dragon dildo I have. Is it flared Chance, which is the flared horse cock-shaped one.
Do you have like a regular one or one you can fill with fake cum?
I've got one that has the cum tube.
Was that extra money?
Mm-hmm.
Is it worth the extra money?
It kind of is like part of what gets you off, what really gets you going. Because if it's just like, no, I just want to be fucked, and like that's enough for you, then you don't need to do it. But if you're like, oh my God, no, I also love, like, if, cumflation is something that turns you on, or like, just the idea of something just being come in is part of it, then yeah, I'd say it's worth it.
Because like I see it's I don't know if the trend's still going on, but that was like a big trend a few months back. And I'm like, that's cool, but like I've got like questions. I'm like, what are they mixing? What are they mixing in to make it look like that? Because it's very obviously not cum. Like, I remember one woman was like, yeah, it's aloe vera and coconut milk. And I'm like, that doesn't sound good for your body.
Actually, both of those things sound like they would be fine for the body. Those are normal things put into
not like to put stuff in the, or not to put inside you.
I mean, like if it's going in your ass, like it's not a big deal because
they were not going in the ass,
right? But like it's fairly hard to mess up the chemistry in there. And with a vagina, like, yeah, you do have to be careful what you put in there because you can mess with the chemistry really easily and get a yeast infection or a UTI and stuff. But usually if it's a pretty natural thing, it's usually okay.
All right, fair enough.
Similar question in the whole dragon line stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Minka, just to clarify for the audience, because I'm sure there's at least some audience out there that thinks this. The extra large size dildos that some folks have seen in videos and junk,
Mm-hmm.
those don't affect how stretched out or tight a woman is, correct?
Correct. It's kind of that whole idea of the joke of oh, it's like throwing a hot dog down a hallway. That's not how vaginas work. They are very stretchy. So if you did it over and over and pretty constantly, there might be a little bit of a difference, but it's not really going to change how tight you are. It's kind of like giving birth. People are like, oh, you've given birth, so you must be super loose. And it's not usually. Every now and then it happens, but yeah, it's not usually a thing. The vagina is built to be stretchy and to be able to, push a human child out of it.
Or just do your Kegels.
Yeah. Kegels are always good to do for people with penises and people with vaginas.
All right. I think that's all the questions I've got for that section. Alt or Minka, you guys got any questions for everybody else?
One dildo that they obviously haven't really talked about on here is the super long ones. Because if you're careful and know your anatomy, know your stuff, know what you're doing, some of you might have seen them, but there are porn stars that have shoved super long dildos up their ass because it's basically going through their internal systems, and they're going to be fairly skinny, not tiny skinny, but about average size, no bigger than that, and very flimsy so that it can move and twist as it goes through the body, because that's what the intestines do. You're not going to see those ones for sale pretty much anywhere. Those are going to be specialty toys, but it is one of those things that if you are careful with it, you can shove a very long dildo very far up your ass. And you do always have to be careful because you don't really have any pain sensors in your intestines and stuff. So if you're doing anything too rough, you could end up rupturing yourself inside and you might not realize it, and that can actually be fatal. So if you're planning on doing anything a bit crazy, make sure you spend some time to be safe and learn what you're actually doing, because if you're just oh, I'm gonna shove something in me and just go straight up as far as it can go, it doesn't always work like that. You have to kind of bend and certain stuff. It's weird. Bodies are weird.
Yes, when it comes to sex and all things sex related, you should always be practicing safety. At least that's what I took from what you just said, Minka.
Yeah, always practice safety. Because there are videos of people out there that have taken the largest, at least at the time, Bad Dragon dildo that was made, which was the T-Rex one in the extra large. And there are some that were able to take the entirety of it up their assholes, but that's not something that's safe to do as a first timer. These people are doing this over and over, and their bodies have potentially even adjusted a bit to that kind of stuff. So don't try to go from 0 to 60 on your first one. Be safe, be careful. Sex is awesome, sex toys are great, but none of it's worth dying for.
All right.
Man, it's weird coming from you.
Hey, I push boundaries and I push limits, but I always am try to be aware of what I'm doing.
Yeah, I assume Minka is not jumping over that line. She pushes the line. That's it.
I hang out in the rack section of sex and kink, which is risk-aware consensual kink. So it's sometimes it can get a little dangerous, but it is that is what part of what RAC is it's like making sure you do understand the risks and understanding the safety parts of it too. Because, like, especially if you're playing with other people, the last thing you want is somebody to, like, die during play.
Alright. Moving on from the dildo section, we've got harnesses. We've got there's strap-ons, underwear style, and bondage, which includes chest harnesses, collar harnesses, and full body I'm
have nothing to add to any of that.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
I guess I have a lot of experience with a lot more sex toys if we're, like, basically considering most BDSM style stuff sex toys, which you technically could.
I definitely understand what a strap-on is.
Mm-hmm.
Underwear style, definitely you have questions about.
So imagine just like a pair of underwear that has a hole in it where you can put the dildo through, and
so boxers. We're just talking about regular ass boxers, okay?
Yeah, boxers or like all the way up to thongs. But they just have a hole, and so like the dildo you have to use is going to have like some sort of base on it, or else obviously it doesn't have anything to hold it. But yeah, it's just kind of a lightweight, more comfortable thing to wear, because like a strap-on, is all straps, and you've got to like adjust everything, pull everything tight. Whereas the underwear style, it's closer to just like, hey, yeah, I'm just fucking you with like basically wearing nothing.
Woo.
It's definitely interesting, especially the way they phrase it in their little paragraph. The quote is, "They're great for people who want to wear a harness under their clothes and those who want to wear them to pack."
It may have been originally like that, and it's possible that some of Packers are still like that. But I do know that there are like Packers that are just sold as Packers nowadays.
All right, you're gonna have to explain that term, because I don't think I understand, and I'm sure there's at least some of the audience that doesn't understand.
Okay, so this is generally on the other side of trans, with trans men. So I don't know a ton about it, but a lot of times, like, a Packer is basically like a fake penis that usually is, from the ones I've seen, usually they're a bit more soft, so they kind of have the flaccid look. And it's to put something in your pants to basically give you the feeling of having a penis. So, like, if you were someone who was born with a vagina, but you are a man, it helps give you that feeling. And, like, so it's just like, no, I have a dick in my clothes. And, like, I can feel it from the inside. I can, like, see the bulge from the outside. That's usually what Packers are, from my understanding.
So whereas with strap-ons, I would assume those are much more rigid and like having a hard-on.
Yeah, generally...
The underwear style can be more of a flaccid, kind of almost a starting point.
Yeah, and you could put the really hard ones in on the underwear style, but, like, you're not going to put clothes over those if you have this, like, 6-inch hard plastic silicone cock sticking out. Like, that's not what that is going to work for.
Okay. So moving on to the bondage harnesses. I know what each are.
Mm-hmm.
Chest harness is kind of like as if you took like a tank top or something similar to very tight skin hugging and turned it into just straps that bisect and wrap around your body, your torso.
I would say that could be considered a chest harness. A lot of times when they talk about those, you are talking about like leather straps, so things that hold you, or like latex, something that like constricts you, kind of like straight jackets. Basically, any type of rope can be used. Any type of thing that really can like hold or constrict you, and it doesn't even have to be that. Like, technically, like, if you just have one that's like just a harness that you wear that's just like 3 or 4 leather straps with some ring connectors and stuff, like that is still technically a chest harness. But for like sex play stuff, like generally it is going to be something that is a bit more restrictive.
Okay. I would have never... When I think of harnesses, like bondage harnesses, I've only seen what they what most more vanilla couples and people have seen at like pride parades, where that's a bit more public and clearly not extremely sexual, but sexual leaning.
Yeah, because you can get things, you can basically get harnesses that will restrict any part of the body. So you have like the arm binders that like pull the arms behind the back and tie them together so they're like tied straight behind you. You've got leg binders, you've got ankle binders, you've got wrist binders. Like hell, even handcuffs can be considered a sex toy.
And then next they've got listed collar harnesses, which I assume are the leather or chain or whatever material they're made out of, like necklaces essentially. But you typically, I assume, they're tighter.
So there's again a lot of variation in that. They can be like leather collars. You can have chain collars. Some people will use actual like dog and cat collars. And a lot of times those ones are used more for like hooking something to either like hold somebody in place, like hook them to a chain in a cage, or, you know, put them on a lead and so they can lead them around. But you also have posture collars that do like basically force your chin up and everything and force your neck to be kind of extended and in a technically good posture position, so you can't really move around. There are some people that even use like the neck braces that you would get if you broke your neck.
On the larger side, like a neck harness.
Sometimes you can get some that are like they're always going to be a little bit taller than like a general collar, but not all of them are like huge, like say a neck brace if you broke your neck or something.
Okay. And then finally we've got full body harness, which I imagine is essentially taking the chest harness, the collar harness, putting those together, and then adding a bit more for like your legs and arms to be constricted.
Yeah,
I guess would be the right word.
Yeah, and so like you could think of like, you know, like a cat suit as a type of harness. There's those ones where they basically like pull the arms up and bind them against themselves, and the same with the like legs, and so you're crawling around on your elbows and knees. A gimp suit could be a full body harness. Like another one too that actually like gags is can be considered a harness, because there are gags that you can get that have dildos that, you know, come out the front, or ones that like the dildo goes into the mouth. Some of them are inflatable. So there's really like all types of harnesses you can use for all sorts of things. Like the mouth gags, they have some that are like trays, so you can make somebody kind of like deliver drinks and stuff while they're all tied up, and they can only deliver it with like their mouth. You can have an ashtray there so that they are the human ashtray. All sorts of stuff you can do with harnesses and bondage and everything.
Oh, you got anything?
No. You picked the probably worst thing. Not the worst thing, just something I have actually no experience with. I know my one friend, she likes to wear a harness every now and again, but aside from that, I got nothing.
Alright, so obviously I'm going to pull you in for this at least a little bit. Clearly we are already strapping gentlemen, so we don't need a strap-on or underwear style.
Wow, you really went there. Okay.
I thought it'd be a good pun.
You can have a 6 out of 10.
Good enough for me. So would you ever be into harnesses or having a collar on your partner?
I just said my one friend has a harness.
Well, that's your friend. I meant like in the bedroom.
Yeah. I know. That's what I was talking about.
Oh, well, see, I didn't understand that. Because there are
Yeah, it sounds
harnesses you
like
can
you
wear out in public for style.
I mean, she does. She just puts clothes on over top of them. Because it's not that tight or big of a harness.
Fair enough. Minka, do you have any experience with? Well, for you, I would assume you'd be able to use strap-ons in underwear style. But any experience with any of the few things we've been talking about?
Yeah, I've had some partners that have used strap-ons on me. For one of the kink parties we had, I didn't end up using it at all, but I walked around with the Bad Dragon horsecock in a harness for the whole party.
Like hanging off of you, or
Yep, just
pushed up into you?
Nope, hanging off of me. So just walking around with this giant horsecock.
That'd be an interesting
Please
one
tell me
to
you
see.
got to hit people with it.
No, I didn't end up hitting anyone. Because I was at a point where I was like not super talkative, and obviously even just hitting someone with the dildo is something you'd need to get consent for. And so I was just like, nope, I'm not really here to play with it at all. I just want to walk around with it because it's funny.
Okay, I was gonna ask, was that more for the humorous part of it, or more of a embarrassing, I have to walk around with this attached to me?
No, that one was a humorous.
Okay.
Yeah, that was my own decision. That was not a like negotiated scene with someone else that involved humiliation play or anything.
Okay. I just knew you were into that, so I was curious.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any other experience with harnesses at all?
I have used some, like the first dildo I bought actually had some really thin straps on it and stuff, and so I have done stuff where I have basically flipped it all inside out to use the harness to basically strap dildos inside myself, and that's pretty fun because then you don't have to like constantly like hold it in with your hand or do whatever. It's just like, nope, this is in you, and you now get to deal with it.
For some reason, that like sparked a thought in my brain, and I'm pretty sure these exist, and I wouldn't be surprised if they did. I'd be extremely surprised if they didn't, honestly. But are there dildos that are built with a harness that can be connected to the hand, and essentially you use your hand as like an extension of it? That makes sense.
I'm sure there are. I haven't seen one personally in my life, but it would not surprise me at all because like you have silicone hands that are all in fisting shapes. You have the gloves that have like different types of textures on them for fingering. Like, I am sure that they exist.
Well, I don't know if it made sense, but in my brain I'm imagining the dildo is like essentially suction cup to the palm, and you use
That way. Oh.
Yeah.
Maybe. I don't know. They might not.
That'd
just
be an
because it's
interesting
like you can, they're like, oh, you can just hold it. So maybe
Yeah.
they've not gone that far.
Something for the future to look into. Maybe I can make a business out of it.
There you go.
All right. Next category is external vibrators. And they've got quite the little list here for that one. We've got palm vibrators, jewelry vibrators, panty, wand, finger, bullet, clitoral, vibrating penis rings, and penis vibrators. I didn't know there was such a variety, honestly.
There is.
Like, I knew about the wand, fingers, bullets, clitoral, and penis rings. I think that's all I know out of the list.
Yeah, so...
Oh, and I guess jewelry, which is... I think another name for those would be a bunny vibrator.
No. Like, are you thinking like a rabbit?
Yeah.
No.
A rabbit, that's what I'm thinking of.
No.
Oh, from their description, that's what I thought it was.
I don't think so. Unless the rabbit vibrator has changed.
Oh nope, that's in a totally different category. I scrolled down a little bit.
The rabbit vibrators should be closer to dildos.
I misunderstood what it said.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I was like, no way.
I thought it was saying it stimulated both areas.
Oh, gotcha.
Adorned to it. Okay.
Yeah, so palm vibrators, just like the description says, it's generally shaped like a computer mouse, and so it's something that you kind of like, you would hold like a mouse, like you palm it, and it is meant to cover the entire vulva and, so the vulva, if you don't know, is the actual name of the vagina and clitoris and labia and all of it. So like, technically, when you're talking about the vagina, you're talking about a specific part of the vulva. The vulva is the whole thing. So you stick it over the vulva, and then it vibrates. So it's going to vibrate basically most of the stuff that's there on the surface. So it's going to be your labia and the clit.
It's giving you all over stimulation down there.
Mm-hmm. Instead of a lot of vibrators that do focus on the clit, it is a more overall thing. And then, so like a jewelry vibrator, a lot of times you're going to see those as the necklaces that look almost like pens. And it's just a vibrator that you can wear as a piece of jewelry, but then you can take it off and use it as a vibrator. And they're small vibrators usually. Like, obviously you're not wearing like an entire huge dildo as jewelry.
That's definitely interesting. I feel like the picture in my head is very simple, and it's just like, yes, you're wearing a vibrator around your neck, but I feel like they'd have, maybe they're not, but I feel like they must look more artistic and jewelry-like. Oh, so like their suggestion, the Vesper Crave.
Oh, is that what they suggest? Yeah. So,
okay,
it literally almost just looks like a pen or something.
Interesting.
So, if people know what it is, if you're wearing it as a necklace, they're going to know you're wearing a vibrator. But a lot of people who don't know are just going to be like, oh, it's an interesting little pendant.
That'd definitely be my reaction, because I don't think that'd be the first thing that would pop into my head.
Yeah. And it is kind of to be a bit more discreet way to carry a vibrator with you. And I'm sure some people also get the excitement of like publicly wearing a vibrator. Yeah.
Okay, I assume, moving on to the panty vibrator, that's very similar to the palm vibrator.
Generally, yeah.
I imagine it's a little less stimulating because it's something that attaches to the panties, so it's not pressed up against the body.
Yeah, so that's gonna
not as tightly. That is.
That's gonna depend on how tight your panties are a lot of times, but the panty vibrators a lot of times are also the ones that have like remote controls, or nowadays they have apps where you can access them. So like if you can just stick it in your panties, wear the panties, and you don't have anything like massive like sticking out or inside you necessarily, and so you can go and get your vibration on basically wherever you want, and you can have a good time if someone else has control of it and everything. So you can be out to dinner, and they're like, what's your order? And then the other person all of a sudden starts vibrating you, and you have to try to handle that situation.
Calm yourself before speaking.
Which that blurs a little bit of the lines of consent. So I would say generally don't do that type of stuff if it directly involves someone else. Like, do it. You can do it in public, but like, don't really do it while like you're having conversations with someone else if they're not consenting and aware, because
that's definitely something I'd want to explore. But at the same time, it's like, but you're not getting consent from the mass crowd, essentially.
The mass crowd is, I would say, is not as big of a worry, because usually like it's
not as stimulating as they make it seem.
Yeah, but if you're sitting there talking to someone and then all of a sudden like you start to get your like I'm really turned on and horny face, like you've now brought someone else into your sex play that was potentially not consenting.
Right. This is more something that doesn't quite bring you to the edge, but it's got you ramped up.
Yeah, and some people will come from it. Like, everybody's different. Some people
Right.
don't use
I'm not
much.
saying you wouldn't be able to, but this is definitely something that's typically out in public. It's more used to keep that edge kind of built up, but not always push you over that edge.
Yeah, so it's like, don't do it while they're being asked for their order. Do it while they're trying to take a drink while it's just you two at the table, that kind of stuff.
Right. All right. Moving on to the wand vibrator. I imagine this is what typically a lot of people picture when they picture vibrators. It's either, obviously, they picture a dildo that vibrates, or something like this, which, as they say, is shaped like a microphone, and a lot of people get a laugh out of seeing.
Yeah, so this is kind of what revolutionized the women's sex side of things, because these type of wands are what have led a lot of women who have never experienced orgasm in their life, because many don't, and very few actually experience orgasm from penile penetration. So these are the things that have kind of like revolutionized that, and it's just like, that's why you hear women talk about magic wands all the time, because it's just like generally most women who are sexual will have at least one sort of wand vibrator.
You didn't know that, Alt?
No.
Yeah, it's a pretty big thing.
Yeah, many women never experience orgasm in their life.
Yeah, it's definitely, I'm sure it's probably something that most women don't want to bring up, because it's kind of an embarrassing thing to admit.
Well, it's only embarrassing because of the stigma around it, where it's just like,
well,
so
I'm not
many
saying
people
it should be embarrassing, but
right?
It is because of society has built it up to be embarrassing,
right? Because it's just like, oh, sex is to achieve orgasm, and so if you're not achieving orgasm, then obviously like your partner wasn't good enough, or like there's something wrong with you or whatever. And so a lot of women who have never achieved orgasm do learn to fake it, because otherwise, it leads to uncomfortable conversations that happen that don't need to happen, just because of the way society thinks sex should work. But yeah, very few women can actually orgasm from penis in vagina sex alone.
I mean, if you ask certain crowds out there, they say women shouldn't need to, but...
Huh?
I'm talking about the far right. A lot of them just think women are for baby delivery, and that's all they're good for. They don't need their stimulation.
But yeah, so magic wands are generally a staple in people who have vaginas toy box.
Which, they aren't all shaped like wands. Some women like to get the massagers out of the massaging sections.
Yeah, which those work just as well. Like actual back massagers, or like... I feel like those newer ones that have come out that are like the black, like sports massagers.
Yeah.
I feel like that would be pretty fucking intense, because it's so like small of an area and so directed. Like I feel like that might be a little too intense, but...
I'll say, without revealing too much, that yes, they're enjoyable.
What you been doing?
I've got experience using them on people.
People? That makes it sound more suspicious. You should have just said your wife.
Yes,
I
was teasing it. I was waiting for one of you to just be like, Puce, we know it would be your wife.
No, we're just gonna take your dog. It's fine.
In the article, it actually does bring up a good point, though. Like it doesn't have to just be used on like the clit. That is where a lot of women use it, because for a lot of women, the clit is actually what's going to help them get off the most, stimulating the clit. But like you can use it on the taint the asshole. Like, there's a lot of erogenous zones on the human body, and most of them, you're going to get some enjoyment out of vibration there.
It's definitely a good in combination toy to use.
Mm-hmm.
All right, moving on to the next vibrator they speak about. We've got the finger vibrator, which I've seen them around, but I've never like actually seen them in use. But I imagine it's just essentially either the size of one finger or possibly two, and it's just turns your fingers into a vibrator.
Basically, so it can be, some of them can be used for like, this one is still on external vibrator, but some of them can be used for like fingering with vibration.
Yes.
But some of them are basically just like either you have it on one finger or it's almost like a ring that sits between both fingers. And so then you can just put your hand down in your crotch and just vibrate it that way so that you're not having to, like hold a whole wand.
It's using all the work for you.
Yeah. And generally, because they are smaller, they're not going to have as much power, but I wouldn't be surprised if there are people that have figured out ways to make more powerful things in smaller packages.
If you know how to use it, I'm sure you can get there. When I picture finger vibrator, I picture that ring sling thing that they've got in the Doctor Strange movies.
I'm sorry.
It's
funny.
I've put that
It's
image
funny.
in your head, and you will never get it out. And I
No,
hope
it's gonna
I've
be-
ruined that movie for all the audience as well.
Yeah, basically,
it'll be gone in like 20 minutes, dog.
imagine
Tomorrow.
wearing that basically like the reverse way so that it goes into the palm.
I feel like that'd work pretty well. I bet you somebody's designed it already and been like, for the Doctor Strange fans out there, I've made this.
Mm-hmm.
All right, moving on. We've got the bullet vibrator, which is, I don't exactly understand what this is. This is just essentially a bullet-sized vibrator, right?
Yeah, so imagine the little ones that, like, they're obviously different sizes and slightly different shapes, but, like, a lot of them are kind of, like, pill-shaped, kind of that ovally egg-shaped. You can get ones that are wireless of those as well for using with partners or, like, doing the online stuff, but there are also ones that are wired, so you have the little, like, a lot of hentai will be drawn where you have, like, a bunch of wires coming out to little controls basically that are taped onto people. Those are going to be your bullet vibrators.
Exactly what you're talking about. When Puce was explaining, I was like, "What the fuck is he talking about?" And you were like, "Oh, it's in this." I'm like, "I know exactly what you're talking about."
Mm-hmm. So,
man, seeing those in certain situations is like unnecessarily hot. I don't know why.
Yeah, so bullet vibrators are a pretty long-standing and fairly common type of vibrator.
The next three should be pretty easy to fly through. We've got the clitoral vibrator, which I imagine is a vibrator more focused for use on the clit.
Yeah, so like it says there, this category has no limits. So a lot of those things could fall into, that we've talked about, could fall into clitoral vibrators.
There you go. Proud of you.
The clitoris is also technically a correct way to say it. But yeah, there's also all sorts of things. Like there's a one that basically has these little almost like tongue-like things all over it. So it's like almost like a, I can't think of the word, but like a wheel that has a bunch of tongues. And so you turn it on and it just like quickly spins. And so it's like this little tongue thing like hitting your clit over and over. So I would consider that a clit vibrator as well. Like there's all sorts of crazy things out there.
Never would have thought about that. That'd be interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Up next, we've got the vibrating penis ring, which is just essentially a ring that goes around a man's penis and vibrates it, which I assume this will also fall into internal vibrators as well, because obviously you can insert it as well as use it on everything outside.
I mean, it depends on the ones, because like if you get a cheap one from like Target or Walmart, like that usually has a big bulky part where the battery goes, and so it's not going to be super easy to just shove that into somebody. But
Yeah,
Not trying hard enough.
But yeah, chances are you've probably seen one of those before because they are sold most places. Like, you don't have to go to a sex store for those.
Then we've got penis vibrators, which I imagine are just essentially like a condom. It goes over the whole thing and turns the whole thing into a big old vibrator.
Mm-hmm. Those are definitely less common, but you can find those online. So it is something that will vibrate the entire penis. Sometimes it will also encase the testicles, so it'll vibrate the balls as well. Like, there's variations on that.
I've got to say, that'd be a little uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm. And not every sex toy is for everybody, you know? Like, that is the whole thing about sex toys, is it's like, you should find out what really gets you going and, you know, like, find the sex toys that work for you. And then if you do have a partner or, like, an active sex life, you know, like, share those things with the people you're doing stuff with, because sex is supposed to be fun. So a lot of times the way you're going to have the most fun is by talking to each other and knowing what gets each other going the most, instead of just being like, oh yeah, I guess you can shove your dick in me. That'll be great.
Gotta spice it up sometimes.
Yeah. And sometimes that is enough for people, you know, so, like, no shame on that.
Alright. Moving on to the next section, we've got the internal vibrators. G-spot vibrators, A-spot, eggs, egg on a stick, anal, and vibrating prostate. These we should be able to fly through.
So, yeah, basically a quick overview of all of these. The first four, G-spot vibrator, A-spot vibrator, egg on a stick vibrator, are usually used for vaginas. And then anal vibrator, vibrating prostate massager are for anal. So they're all toys that are going to go inside of you. And then just depending on the shape they have and their different functionality, they will often focus on vibrating specific areas inside you. And, like, you can get away with an egg vibrator in a vagina, but unless you use, like, a condom or something, don't do it in your butt, because once again, like, the vagina only has so far it can go. So generally, like, if you have something that you've put in there, you can get it out fairly easily, especially because,
it's
like,
only got one way to go. It's got to come back out.
Yeah, and like, your kegels are kind of built to push stuff out. But if you shove that up your ass, like, if you don't have a way to get it out, you're probably going to have to go to the doctor if it gets too high. And it's vibrating, so it quite potentially is going to be moving.
That'd be a little scary.
Yeah.
I had never heard of an A-spot vibrator. Gotta admit that. I've never heard of that at all.
Yeah, it's those spots are still sometimes debated. So I'm not surprised that you haven't, to be honest. Like, I don't think that's a failing on your part by any means.
So this is more mythical than the G-spot, is what I'm hearing.
Well, the G-spot isn't really technically mythical. It's just, like,
yeah, it was a joke.
Right. No, I get you, but yeah,
comedy joke.
They kind of give them these names, but it's basically just finding the, like, extra sensitive spots inside someone's body, and that all has to do with anatomy and stuff, which is why there's also, I'm kind of surprised they haven't called it this here, but, like, sometimes it's called the P-spot for the prostate. There's just different spots that tend to be extra sensitive, and sometimes that's just because, like, there's, like, extra pressure coming in on that wall, so, like, it's a little bit tighter or something. So, like, if it vibrates, you feel it a bit more, because a lot of times with the G-spot, you know, a better way to get it is to push down on somebody's pelvis while you're, like, fingering them, because then it's pushing things together more. So,
Okay.
Yeah,
I will write that down.
You should. That actually.
Write that down. That makes a lot of sense, actually.
Yeah.
That makes so much sense. That's why they do it in the hentai. Oh, that makes so much sense.
See, this is why you need to pay attention to these talks.
not when you're doing them, because you're just so surgically, not surgically, clinically just going through the list one by one. We don't have the same list anymore, so I'm just like, what the fuck are they talking about? Because I don't know where you're talking about is. Because I don't have any extra. Maybe it's because of Capper Sky. Oh,
I was wondering if you had a plugin that was blocking these from popping up.
Probably Capper Sky going, hey, stop. Yeah, because websites don't really work for me sometimes.
So, moving on to the next section. This is where I was thinking they were going in the external vibrators. This is the combination vibrators. This is the rabbit vibrators I was thinking of.
Yeah, so basically this just includes anything that is a combination of the internal vibration as well as the external. So like a rabbit is a very common example because it is a dildo that goes inside and often vibrates, and then it also has the little bit that comes up.
The little curvy cube that sticks out.
Yeah, sometimes is actually shaped like a rabbit, sometimes it's a dolphin. I've seen different animals, sometimes it's just like it's not shaped like an animal, but
it's just a little fork tongue thing.
Yeah, that will focus on vibrating the clit. So basically anything that's working part of your insides and part of your outsides is going to fall into this.
Those can be very useful.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to skip.
Speaking from experience?
I may have used them on my wife a little bit. Got to make sure she enjoys it as much as I do.
When are you going to use one, though?
When I get those body parts, which is really going to be never. We're going to skip down a little bit to the miscellaneous pleasure products, as they label them, for the penis owners.
Oh, but you're skipping over basically fucking machines.
Is that listed?
Thrusters.
Oh, yep, I did see that. We can talk about that for a moment. I didn't see that one. I was just like, oh, we kind of talked about everything. Skip.
I mean, it's super easy. It's just usually a dildo attached to some sort of machinery that will do the thrusting for you. Oftentimes used in bondage and kink. Probably seen in hentai if you read a lot of hentai. But yeah, like you can have all sorts of thrusters, where ones that are just like it's just one dildo goes in and out. You can change the speed. Some will have two, so it's penetrating both holes. You can have some that have a cum like connection tube, so you can also fill somebody with cum or a cum like substance while you're doing it. That's basically what they are. A lot of people will build their own, but you can buy them.
I don't know if I'd ever want to use one of those. That'd be interesting.
I do want to hit Benoit balls as well before.
I was going to tie that into just after the penis toys.
Okay. If you got a plan.
So for those of us who have a cock and balls, there's a few toys out there that exist for us. We've got pulsators, automatic masturbators, masturbation sleeves, cock rings, and O-nuts. I've heard of most of these, but they're essentially just, for the most part, I believe pulsators fall under similar as masturbation sleeves, but I feel like pulsators and masturbation sleeves, and probably automatic masturbators, all fall under the same kind of category of fleshlights and toys that are essentially made to help you along and substitute out your hand for something else. I'd definitely be willing to try them, but I almost feel like it's like, obviously that most of them are not made for one use only, but for me it'd almost feel like it'd have to be one use, and then I wouldn't be interested anymore.
But a lot of times you do have to clean them out, yeah.
Yes. Essentially, for those who don't know, they're toys that usually have a hole built in that you would insert your penis into, and then if it doesn't have the function built in, you move it up and down to simulate being inserted into a woman's vagina.
Or mouth.
Or mouth, yeah.
Or ass.
Or ass. Any hole. We'll put it that way. But I've seen videos and stuff with these in them, and they definitely look interesting. They definitely have a lot of different designs, that's for sure.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I was like, and there are even like porn stars and different people that have basically had like pocket pussies modeled after their own bodies and stuff. So you can be like, oh, I'm going to get the one of this porn star I like and fuck that. And imagine I'm fucking her while I do it. Like they get pretty crazy.
Then moving on to things like cock rings and O-nuts. If I understand them correctly, cock rings are more for making you last longer with a woman or partner in general. Whereas O-nuts are essentially for those who have partners who are a little bit more sensitive and will stop you from fully inserting yourself. Does that sound like an apt description, Minka?
Yeah, I'd say that's pretty good. Yeah, because a lot of time cock rings are they're tight. They can be metal. They can be silicone. They can be different things, but generally they are used to restrict blood flow. So it is basically to help keep you longer, and make it harder for you to ejaculate. So sometimes that can be used for helping the partner enjoy themselves longer. Sometimes it can be used as a part of kink, where it's like you're doing edging or orgasm denial, that kind of stuff. And yeah, it does. The O-nut is, you were correct on that. You basically can add however much you need to limit the amount of the penis that will go into the hole.
All right. That kind of wraps up men's toys. Luckily, we're pretty simple. We've got one thing to use, and luckily nature's kind of made it a one-use type of object, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Moving on to the next section, we have butt toys. We've got butt plugs, anal beads, and prostate massagers. All fairly self-explanatory. Butt plugs plug up your butt. They're not made to be very long, as far as I'm aware. Am I right, Minka?
Generally, they're not very long. They usually focus more on circumference than length.
And then anal beads are typically more for the length and less for the circumference.
They can be a bit of both, but yeah, like generally, anal beads are a string of beads. A lot of times they will get bigger as the thing goes along, so it's kind of both, but they are definitely more about like depth generally.
And then prostate massagers can usually fall into either category, I would imagine, and are pretty much just like a vibrator, but for the butt.
Yeah. I was like, sometimes it is just like sometimes butt plugs are also vibrators. Sometimes you will have some that do have that special shape to try to hit the prostate spot. Like there's all sorts of stuff out there.
All right. That was another quick little section. I figured we'd cover that real fast. Mm-hmm. Next, they move on to the kink curious section of sex toys. This is where I figured we'd pull in Benoit's, because from at least their description, it seems to be more of a BDSM integrated item.
They have been adapted to be used in BDSM, but like the original use was for strengthening the pelvic floor and strengthening your Kegel muscles. So basically, they're like the two balls that you would put inside you, and then you use your muscles to kind of like spin them around. So if you've ever had those ones where you have like the two balls in your hand and you kind of like shift them around each other, like putting them in circles around each other, you're basically doing that inside the body.
Okay, I didn't know that. I thought it was just more for like holding them inside. I didn't know that you could kind of multitask in there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that was the original use, but that is kind of why they've turned into kink and BDSM stuff sometimes, because it will be like like, you have to keep these inside of you because sometimes they're not super large, so they could slip out pretty easily, and sometimes it is also like, no, I'm going to make you keep these in you for this long or whatever.
Right. It's a hold on to these for me, and if you don't, I'll punish you. What else they've got listed under here is blindfolds, which can make it a little bit more spicy, makes it so your partner or you don't know what's going to happen or come next. Feather teasers, which are just, as far as I've been aware, feathers on the end of a stick, and you just kind of brush your partner lightly, because some people like that light, intimate touch.
Yeah, like imagine a feather duster.
Yeah. Then we've got handcuffs, which we mentioned earlier. Always make sure you're not tightening those to the max, because you don't want to cut off circulation.
Yeah, so these are, honestly, I don't know that these days these are even really considered like kink or BDSM. These are still all pretty vanilla.
Well, like they put it, it's a introduction.
Right, like if you've never done anything with toys and you want to kind of go there, like these are great. Blindfold is a great introduction into sensory deprivation. And that can be a lot of fun because all of a sudden you're not able to use, like if you also include like earplugs, different stuff like that, all of a sudden you can't see or hear what's going on. And so everything that happens has that added sensation of like excitement and fright. And so it can really like elevate the pleasure that you're having. Feather teaser is a great introduction to sensory play. So there's a lot of different things you can do there. Like you can play with soft feathery things, soft leathers, soft furs, and then you can also play with things that have like spikes and points and stuff. Like there's a lot of stuff you can do there. Feathers are a great introduction because they are soft, so you're not playing with anything pointy. And then handcuffs is a very like soft intro into bondage.
Yes, these are definitely all very surface level. As if we were to imagine like an iceberg, these are the first few things that would come to mind that people can see right off the bat when they think of BDSM.
Right. And I definitely don't, like, I'm not trying to shame anyone. Like, if your sex life if this is as adventurous as you get, like, that's okay. Like, yeah, don't ever push yourself beyond a point where you're comfortable, and like for some people, this is enough to add that extra excitement that they need,
Some people don't need to insert a whole bad dragon in them.
And some people do.
See, the shame can go both ways. So even if you don't like it hardcore, nothing wrong with being on the softcore end of it and enjoying the simple things. And
exactly.
There's also nothing wrong with it going off into the depths of it all and exploring what BDSM has to offer.
Yep.
And then this last section is just a quick wrap up of sex furniture. You've got your sex swings and your pillows and wedges. Which admittedly, I thought, because whenever they bring up sex wedges in romance comedies and shows, it's all about getting the woman pregnant. So I thought they were like for just getting women specifically pregnant and not a sex thing.
I don't know if they were actually ever used for that. I could see it being used back before science actually
I think it's more of a way for
things.
them to say, this is for sex, but be quiet, we can't say that out loud.
Maybe, but it would not surprise me if before science really understood it, if that was a thing that people did, because it was like, okay, like we're going to have the wedge to where the triangle, like I stand behind the tip of the triangle and you're on the triangle that leads down to the ground, so you're kind of upside down, so that when I come in you, the cum is going to then go into your, through your cervix and into your womb, like the ovaries and stuff, like we'll have an easier time. But, like nowadays we know that that's not really how things work. So again, these are pretty light BDSM stuff, and they can be great for trying out different positions, the pillows and wedges and stuff, because like they can take pressure off of your hands and knees. If you're like trying to do doggy style, suddenly you're able to put your body weight down on something to help you stay in that position easier. Sex swings can actually be a lot of fun because, like you can use bondage as well with it. So you're basically tied to the swing and then you're kind of helpless as they sit there and fuck you while you're rocked back and forth. This type stuff.
I was going to say, these are definitely more for the helping explore different sex positions.
Yeah, these are great for different positions.
So definitely look into these things if you're looking to spice up and change the positions you want to have sex in. But that wraps up our little event for the night. Minka, Alt, do either of you have any final words?
Where can you get these types of things?
As Minka said, for those who are a bit more adventurous as far as the larger toys.
So Mr. Hanky's Toys, Ben and Tom, Uberime, Uberrime. I have not been to theirs. Geeky Sex Toys, Tantus, and Lust Arts.
And then for those who are just looking for the vibrators and dildos and cock rings and stuff, there's always sites like Adam and Eve. Hopefully one day they'll sponsor us and we can just have an episode dedicated to their website.
Pornhub also sells sex toys.
I did not know that.
Yeah, you can get all sorts of sex toys on Amazon. I mean, it's hard to keep supporting Amazon these days, but like they do sell a lot of sex toy stuff. You can even get some very basic like vibrators and stuff at like Target, at Walmart, places like that. They are starting to get a little more open about that kind of stuff. A lot of times you'll have a local sex shop that will have a huge plethora of stuff to choose from. So there's all sorts of places you can get them. A lot of the online places will ship with packaging that doesn't give away what it is.
Packaging.
Yeah, so you don't have to worry about like your neighbors or someone you live with finding out that you've just ordered a bunch of sex toys. Like,
You mean they don't send you a package with dildo written in big bold letters on it?
If you buy from Wish, they might. So, don't buy from Wish. But yeah, generally it's going to be very discreet.
Thank you all for coming in tonight. I hope you had a wonderful night listening to us talk and jibber jabber about all things sex toy related. Make sure you don't let the door hit you on the way out. And I hope you have a good night. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.